President Trump on Thursday announced he is starting the process of repealing and replacing Obamacare with his executive order to unilaterally change some aspects of health insurance coverage. Mr. Trump, surrounded by top administration officials, business leaders and Sen. Rand Paul, Kentucky, in the White House Roosevelt Room, praised his executive order as a step towards repealing and replacing his predecessor's signature health care law. Mr. Trump stuck with a Republican-held Congress that hasn't passed a bill to undo Obamacare, announced earlier this week that he is resorting to his pen instead. Since Congress can't get its act together on health care, I will be using the power of the pen to give great health care to many people fast. Donald J. Trump at Real Donald Trump, October 10, 2017. Mr. Trump began to walk out of the room without signing the order, until Vice President Mike Pence reminded him. "We've been hearing about the disaster of Obamacare for so long, in my case, many years, most of it outside in civilian life," Mr. Trump said. "And for a long period of time since I've started running and since I became President of the United States, I just keep hearing repeal and replace, repeal and replace. Well, we're starting that process, and we're starting it in a very positive manner." Mr. Trump said the order will cost the federal government virtually nothing, and will force insurance companies to start fighting to sign people up for care. "But the competition will be staggering," Mr. Trump said. "Insurance companies will be fighting to get every single person signed up, and you'll be hopefully negotiating, and you'll get such low prices for such great care." President Trump smiles after signing an executive order to make it easier for Americans to buy barebone health insurance plans and circumvent Obamacare rules at the White House in Washington, D.C. on Thursday, October 12, 2017. Mr. Trump didn't back down from his goal of repealing Obamacare and fulfilling a signature campaign promise, despite the gopaled Congress' inability to agree on how to do that. Mr. Trump said he will pressure Congress to repeal and replace Obamacare once and for all. "Well, this is promoting healthcare choice and competition all across the United States," Mr. Trump said. "This is going to be something that millions and millions of people will be signing up for, and they're going to be very happy. This will be great health care." The president's executive order is intended to make lower premium plans more widely available. Mr. Trump has long talked about his desire to make health insurance plans available across state lines. His order directs Labor Secretary Alexandria Acosta to consider expanding access to association health plans, which could possibly allow American employers to form groups across state lines, according to the White House. The order could also allow employers in the same line of work to join together to offer health care to employees, no matter the state. The president's order, according to the White House, also directs the Labor Department, Treasury Department, and Health and Human Services Department to consider expanding coverage for short-term, limited-duration plans that could be made available to people in specific circumstances, like if a person loses his job or misses the open enrollment deadline. But the president's executive order is likely to face backlash from medical groups, and could very well face a legal challenge. "Since Congress can't get its act together on health care, I will be using the power of the pen to give great health care to many people fast." Donald J. Trump at Real Donald Trump, October 10, 2017. Former President Barack Obama was criticized heavily by Republicans in 2014 when he said, "I've got a pen and I've got a phone," a nod to his intention to use executive action when Congress wouldn't cooperate. Live updates from earlier below 11:45 a.m. Trump begins to walk out of the room without signing the order. After making his remarks, Mr. Trump began walking out of the room, until Vice President Mike Pence tapped him and reminded him to sign the order. Mr. Trump then turned to the table to sign the executive order. 11:45 a.m. Trump pledges to work with Congress to repeal Obamacare once and for all, despite Republicans' inability to repeal Obama's signature law thus far. Mr. Trump isn't giving up, he said. He said he would work with Congress to repeal Obamacare once and for all. 11:45 a.m. Trump: "The whole country is looking for these massive tax cuts." Mr. Trump brought up his administration's efforts to cut taxes, saying the whole country is looking for such massive cuts. The night before, Mr. Trump said his plan will net an average of $4,000 more per average family, although his White House has been unable to explain the math behind those figures. 11:43 a.m. Trump says Obamacare is destroying everything in its wake. The cost of the Obamacare has been so outrageous, it is absolutely destroying everything in its wake, Mr. Trump said, 11:41 a.m. Trump pitches short-term, limited-duration policies. President Trump didn't expand much on this point, but he said he intends to allow the provision of short-term, limited-duration policies, 11:39 a.m. Trump: this order will cost the U.S. government virtually nothing. Mr. Trump touted how he believes his plan will, or rather, won't, have an effect on the federal budget. Mr. Trump said insurance companies will be fighting to get everyone signed up. You'll get such low prices for such great care, he said, 11:36 a.m. Trump: we're starting the process of repeal and replace. Mr. Trump said that for years, mostly during his time in the private sector, he heard the need for repealing and replacing Obamacare. Now, the White House is starting the process, he said, 11:34 a.m. Trump: more countries are starting to respect the U.S. President Trump said other countries are beginning to respect the U.S. His comments echoed what he said Wednesday. It was a darker-than-usual threat by U.S. President Donald Trump, one that has alarmed First Amendment advocates and prompted a senator to wonder whether Trump has breached his oath of office. In words that intensified his anti-media scorn, Trump this week took aim once again at the fake news, declaring in tweets that some networks should have their licenses challenged or even revoked. Network news has become so partisan, distorted and fake that licenses must be challenged and, if appropriate, revoked. Not fair to public. At Real Donald Trump: never mind that pulling NBC's license isn't possible because it does not, in fact, have a Federal Communications Commission license to pull. Trump's very suggestion of using regulatory authority to silence journalism he dislikes raises constitutional concerns for Richard Painter, the former chief White House ethics lawyer for President George W. Bush. If he doesn't intend on respecting the freedom of the press, he cannot be president, Painter said. He has authoritarian instincts, and if he doesn't want to uphold his oath under the Constitution, that's what impeachment is there for. What Painter considers an authoritarian streak in the president may have been amplified on Wednesday, when Trump remarked from the Oval Office that he found it frankly disgusting that the press is able to write whatever they want to write. People should look into it, Trump added, as Prime Minister Justin Trudeau sat in a chair beside him. As constitutional experts grappled with what to make of a president who openly questions the press freedom to report what it deems worthy, Republican Senator Ben Sasse of Nebraska challenged Trump in a statement. Trump said he found it frankly disgusting that the press is able to write whatever they want to write as he sat with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in the Oval Office on Wednesday during NAFTA discussions. Jonathan Ernst Reuter's words spoken by the President of the United States matter, Sasse said. Are you tonight recanting the oath you took on January 20 to preserve, protect and defend the First Amendment? To Painter, that appeared to be the case. The point is, HES indicated that the First Amendment is disgusting to him, Painter said. Disturbing rhetoric. Whether Trump's remarks amount to a violation of the First Amendment depends on whether the words themselves are considered government speech, protected as an expression of the government's viewpoint, said Yvonne Tew, an associate professor who teaches constitutional law at Georgetown University in D.C. If it consists of a threat by the government to regulate freedom of speech or to suppress the press, which press freedom advocates argue is the case, then it would cross the lines into a dangerous zone. Trump's Twitter posts would come under scrutiny, as former White House spokesperson Sean Spicer previously confirmed the president's tweets should be considered official statements. All presidents have at some point slammed their own press coverage. That's been fair game, said Gene Policinski, chief operating officer of the First Amendment Center at the Newseum in Washington. In that regard, Trump's criticism has been no different, though his rhetoric may have been deemed more toxic by pundits. Where the president goes too far, Policinski says, is when he brings up the idea of government retaliation against a news organization he objects to. Presidents are not impeached for adopting extreme interpretations of the law. They are impeached for ignoring the law. Jonathan Turley, constitutional law expert: certainly, if there were a serious attempt to silence the press, I think that would be a constitutional crisis. The president's oath of office, recited at inauguration, includes a commitment to preserve, protect and defend the Constitution, and that means every part of the Constitution, Policinski said. Up for debate is whether the president's words themselves could be considered to violate the Constitution or breach the oath of office, which could be grounds for impeachment. For his part, Jonathan Turley, a nationally recognized authority on constitutional law, believes words must be accompanied by acting in an unconstitutional manner for an impeachable offense to be considered likely as a high crime or misdemeanor. So far, he notes, Trump has largely complied with constitutional rules and checks, such as when courts have ruled against him on his travel ban and attempts to deny funding to so-called sanctuary cities. In this case, Turley said, the president is advancing his interpretation of FCC rules and the First Amendment. But presidents are not impeached for adopting extreme interpretations of the law. They are impeached for ignoring the law, he said. There's often a disconnect between the president's statements and his actions. Still, Turley said, that doesn't take away from Trump's disturbing rhetoric. The idea that the government could start to pull licenses by declaring organizations purveyors of fake news is chilling, he said. If that was not meant in jest, it seriously miscomprehends the constitutional and legal protections afforded to the media. Just hot air. In a blog post, activist journalist Trevor Timm, co-founder of the Freedom of the Press Foundation, argues that regardless of whether Trump can actually punish NBC by revoking its license, his threat, even an empty one, may be enough to make a case actionable. Timm references a 2015 case in the 7th District in which a federal appeals court judge ruled, in effect, that it's not okay for a public official to threaten to use the power of the state even if that official lacks the ability or authority to mete out the punishment. Rebecca Baker, president of the 7,000-member Society for Professional Journalists, a national organization, is keeping watch on whether the president does indeed use his government's powers to erode the constitutionally protected freedom of the press. Right now it's just